Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the first annual Landus Crop Tour results, something we're looking that can carry on year after year. And my name is Don King. I'm the Executive Vice President of Grain for Landus. I've been in that position since June 1st. I come from Northwestern Illinois, where my wife and I have owned and operated agri-retail businesses for the last 36 years. And our business, we've been doing the crop tour since 2012, and I can tell you without a doubt that this is probably the hardest area with the wind and the drought to come up with the results. But I want to applaud everybody from Landus that was part of it. We had great participation. A lot of days out there, you looked at the temperature on your truck and it was 98 or 99 degrees, so it took dedicated people. Landus, for a little background about Landus, we have 59 customer locations. We're located in 26 counties in Iowa. We have more than 600 employees, and we have over 7,000 members of our cooperative. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Guynham, Vice President of Grain Marketing. Tom, please.
Thanks, Don. We wanted to talk just a little bit about why we wanted to do this tour. It's something that we've been talking about for several months. I think going back into January, we started having meetings about this, but we really thought that this would be a benefit to our farmer owners. It would help you folks understand not only what's going on in your local community and your local area, but across our footprint as Landus, across those counties that Don mentioned. Really trying to give you some more information and improve your bottom line. And then from a Landus perspective, it really was to help us kind of get better prepared for harvest, make sure we knew what kind of yield is out there in those areas around our facilities, make sure that we're ready to roll when your combines are ready to roll, which looks like it could be any day now. In fact, we've had some reports of a little bit being picked already of some of this down corn, maybe some beans coming next week early. So we'll see how that goes. But it was really just to help us get ready for the harvest that we believe is coming and make some really good decisions for you. As far as the team that took part in this, we had over 70 people participate. We put them in 32 different teams. Every team had an agronomist, and you can see some of the names on there. Most of those people are employees of Landus. There were a couple of spouses that joined us. So again, to kind of echo what Don said, just thank you to that whole team. A lot of hard work. Some of them, took more than one day to get all this done for them. So appreciate all they did. And with that, I'll hand it off to Matt Brown. Matt is our regional sales manager for the Southeast region.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to cover the methodology that we used to come up with the numbers today. So as we start talking through methodology, our goal was to really give a good look and forecast across the Landus footprint and the counties and townships that you all live and farm in. So we did that encompassing about 35 townships, or 35 counties, excuse me, and 278 townships. With those 30 groups or 70 plus employees over about a 2 to 3 day period. One thing I will tell you, you're all aware of the derecho that hit the center part of our footprint and is going to have a big effect on yield. We decided as a group that we didn't believe we could give a good estimate in those areas. There's too many unknowns with down corn and insurance companies and zeroing things out. So we chose to leave that out of the results that you're going to hear today. There's a stretch that I would say roughly from Coon Rapids, that 141 corridor through Mattard and Luther, and the Highway 210 corridor east through the Collins area. If it was flat and what we believe is going to be unharvestable at this time, we stayed out of it. We did not want that to skew the rest of the results. So just know that as you hear those results today, it does not include those impacted areas from the derecho storm. So if we talk about how we came up with the corn and soybean numbers, from the soybean side, we tried to take 2 samples from each township, both 2 samples of corn and 2 samples of soybeans. We started with a population count, as you always would, and on soybeans it is very difficult to come up with a yield because you're counting pods and soybeans, so there's some subjectivity to it. And in each group, we took the time to count out how many 3-bean pods, how many 2-bean pods, how many 1-bean pods. And the team's going to share some of the agronomics that they saw in the field, but we thought that was our best way to give you a good estimation of what was actually in the field, taking the time to count and be diligent in how we took into account those pods and those soybean counts. If you look at corn is very similar to what you may use in your field when you're going to do a yield estimate. It's population and kernels around by the length to get a total kernel count figured back into the population to get yield. So that's how we came up with what we did. I'm going to turn it over to the Southwest region, Larry Christensen and Sam Wingrove, to go over what they saw.
Yeah, so in the Southwest, you know, variability seems to be one of the biggest factors, observing large swings within the same townships and not having to travel very far, but seeing 40, 50 bushel swings. As we began east or west to east movement, obviously drought intensity increased, the storm increased, and we saw even more damage resulting in even more variability in the fields. If you look at our yield estimates, Carroll, Greene, Crawford counties, you know, you can see 100 bushel swings. Soybeans, very similar story as we got into pockets with high stress. I saw lower pod counts, more flat pods. Last week with the heat, you just did not see those top portions of the plants progressing just due to the heat. Got some pictures. Grain quality is a concern in the corn with bruises. And again, you know, some of the yield estimates that we're coming up with, we have to take into account also our north slopes. Anything facing the west really took it on the chin. So, you know, there's going to be some lower yielding areas in there. But, you know, that's a summary of the Southwest. I'll turn it over to Nate.
So my name is Reed Grant. I'm GMA for the Southeast region. These are some photos from what we found in the field. These are all from Madison County. You can really see, again, the variability between ear to ear, field to field for both corn and beans, looking at the amount of pods that on those beans, as well as some of the tip back and the good fill that those ears do have. So moving into the corn results, again, you know, you can see how it varied county to county. 219 for Story, 179 for Dallas. Dallas definitely had a little more drought pressure. And then you can also see on from county to county, township to township, if you look at some of the highs and lows on the right side of the screen there, Boone 236 low, or for the high, low 123. Another one that stuck out, Madison, the high 281, low 105, and then Story 309, low 125s. So really, I mean, it just obviously on the more drought-stricken areas, we're going to find test weight issues, and there we also did find a little disease pressure out there for the corn, but overall a lot of variability. And I'll turn over to Nate to go over soybeans.
Yeah, so as I look across the 7 counties represented in the Southeast region, as Reed also alluded to, it does do a very good job of reflecting the variability that we've seen. So take a look at Boone County, for example, high of 77, low of 22. Now everyone knows it's extremely difficult to get an accurate yield assessment when it comes to soybeans. So I don't know if we're going to see that low of 22, but we did see a lot more 2-bean pods out there than in normal years. So that's one thing that as you're going from farm to farm, expect that variability, especially if you're going across the county. The other thing the data does show is as you look towards Dallas County, as you get to the south and southwest of our region, that's a big drought area. So it does do a good job of reflecting that. One other thing to expect as we look towards harvest is, you know, that derecho did do quite a bit of damage when we got into the soybeans. From the road, it doesn't look too bad. You get out in them, there's a lot of lodged soybeans. So as we get towards harvest, that's going to play a big role in that. So with that being said, I will pass it on to Rick and Justine on the Northeast.
Good morning, Rick and Justine, Bradford, Northeast region. Justine and I did 3 counties, Hardin, Franklin, and Butler. And you look at the rest of the counties there. Hardin 180 bushel average, Franklin 194, Butler 192. These counties were 8 inches short of rain through the year, 1.5 inches since early June. So the crops are progressing fast. They're 2 weeks ahead of last year, 6 days ahead of the 5-year average. Our plant health is good, low disease pressure. The kernel fill at this point, our 105-day corn and earlier dropped ears a week ago, and they are just too black layered today. They're not black layering. The 105-day and up is shutting down, and we're at 3/4 milk line. But for the most part, our kernel depth is hanging in there. This could cause maybe some test weight to be lower, 54 to 57 pounds possibly, as things are shutting down rapidly. We have good stands though, no holes. We had good planting conditions and moisture early. So going in here the next week or two, I see a couple weeks we'll probably have some combines running just as fast as it's shutting down. I'll pass it on to Justina for beans.
Good morning. And so in the Northeast for beans, we surveyed 14 counties. Those yields range from 51 to 53. The majority of those being in the upper 50s to low 60s. In terms of agronomics, we did note that varieties with maturities 1.7 to 2.1 tended to have more clusters towards the top of the bean. Those that were later varieties didn't have those clusters quite filled out. We also noted that fields that had fungicide applied to them were drying down a little slower, hopefully giving them some more time for some bean development there. With that, I'll turn it over to the Northwest, Stacy Rash and Dave Lemke.
Good morning, everyone. So up in the Northwest region, we're really getting hit hard by the extreme drought conditions. And we were able to see that throughout our crop tour. But if you take note of some of the pictures, that you'll see that the ears sitting there on the tailgate of the truck were about 18 by 18, kind of on some river bottom ground with very shallow kernel depth. That's in the picture. And then also the other picture was a little bit south of Odie-Bolt, kind of coming into that Crawford County line, and you can see how dry the conditions are. We also, Dave Lemke and I also dug up some dirt holes in the fields just to kind of look for some moisture, and we just found a lot. We basically didn't find any moisture in our soil profile. We probably would have had to dig a lot deeper and need a backhoe to find anything. And as you can see, there's a picture of Dave walking through the field. He was looking for there was some green snap that he had found due to some gall midge issues, and then getting hit by those high winds with the derecho. So if you want to turn over to the next slide, as you can see in our corn samples, we saw a lot of variability with the counties. Again, you got some highs in like BV of 219 and a low of 98. BV County was able to catch a couple spotted rains, and I think that made a huge difference. Same thing with Calhoun. Ida caught a few more rains than what we had seen in other areas. So definitely probably the better spot in our region. And Sac County, you know, between 243 and 102, and now I'm starting to hear some silent numbers come in. So it's definitely going to be a shock due to the drought. And then on the bean side, if you take a look at our soybeans, we have a lot of variability due to the drought, hail, and wind damage that we've seen throughout this area. You know, BV County high of 77, a low of 38. You go into Ida 79 to 42, and Sac County 67 to 20, which we're traditionally very heavy bean ground and grow about 65 to 70 bushel beans. So this will be quite a shock to our system. But again, we saw a lot of drought, hail, and wind damage this year, and have a lot of questions whether we'll be able to maintain these yields due to different things. And I'll pass it off to the legend, Dave Lemke, the agronomist, to kind of go into more agronomic issues that we saw.
Yes, good morning. So with all the variability in the weather, we do have a lot of different environmental situations right now that are going to still impact yield. we hit a wall with the soybeans the end of last week where there was the hot, dry conditions, no rain that had been forecasted. Some of the soybeans died in a matter of 2 days. And we're going to have very small soybeans, I'm afraid, which, you know, soybean size can impact your yield up to 25%. We had the earliest planting date ever. We had some of the healthiest beans we've ever had. And then we had the complete stop to moisture. Soybeans, as you know, are made in August. And I think our yields may reflect that here at the tail end. We may be a little high yet in some areas. Corn, kind of the same thing. When you see the 102, 105 temperature heat indexes we had last week, it's like putting those plants into a corn dryer. So, you know, with the lack of moisture, it has cannibalized the stock. The last dying gasp of any species is to reproduce. So you look at what's happened to the corn, the stock quality is questionable. It put everything into the ear. You know, we're going to have some smaller kernels. I don't know how much that will impact the test weight. And we are uncertain on how much percentage of the field is actually impacted by the ratio. You know, each field's going to be different and how that impacts the yield on what you can actually harvest. But with that, you know, just some agronomic concerns company-wide and in the Northwest. But with that, I'll pass it on to Matt Brown.
So as we look to wrap up, we kind of want to summarize the Landus entire footprint and show you all kind of how those yields actually lump together to finish things out here. What I would tell you is this is what we saw. There is going to be, as you heard everybody talk about the variability they saw, this takes into account one spot in the field or two spots in the field where we took a yield check. And so it's an indication, but I have a tendency to believe that we will probably see some yields lower than this across our footprint from things like drought and the deratio where we can't get out to those knobs in the center of the field or take an accurate count. Our goal was to get inside the field, get past the end rows, and get a good representative sample of the field. So as we lump all those things together, what that means is a yield of 188 for corn on average and 55 for soybeans. And remember, as I talked in the beginning, this does not include the deratio, the heaviest impacted area from that storm, that Highway 141, Highway 210 corridor, basically a 60-mile stretch east to west and by 6 or 8 miles north to south across the center of our footprint. So those are not in these numbers, but hopefully the yield information that was presented today by the team is a benefit to you to kind of have an understanding of where things sit in some of your fields and in some of your areas as you look to get going with the combines here in the short term. I'm going to turn it over to Tom to make a few last comments.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to thank all of you for joining us for the webinar. I believe, even though a lot of us that were out in the fields experienced a lot of hotness and heat, we had a lot of fun doing this. And so we wanted to make sure that you guys got this information. Anybody that's a customer of Landus should have gotten a pre-harvest packet in the mail to help set up deliveries. So be looking for that if you haven't seen it. We do have a whole host of different contracting alternatives available. And the agronomists are going to be talking about their Landus Acre Reserve program with you as well going forward. This is something that I want to talk about a little bit, the crop tour. We want to repeat this every year. It's the first year for this. We learned a lot of things about how to do it and how not to do it. And we'd like to invite a lot of our farmers to participate with us next year. Hopefully we'll be beyond this COVID issue and we'll be able to do that with you. And so look for that next year as we get ready to run this out next August. We'll use the same week of the year. And as far as questions, we just really encourage you to talk to your field sales agronomist in your area or your grain marketing advisor. If there's anything you'd like to know more about Landus Acre Reserve or our grain marketing alternatives, we would just ask you to talk to them directly and they can handle all of your questions. And with that, we just would thank you for your time and appreciate you being on with us this morning.